Hello everybody, happy holidays, how's it going? So welcome to another One Piece review. This time we're covering manga chapter 1134. And man oh man, did Oda leave us with a bunch of question marks heading into the new year. There's a lot of talking points coming out of this chapter, which is what you want. But let's start off with the colour spread. And obviously, speaking of talking points, this was pretty much a homage to Kazuki Yao, the Japanese voice actor of Frankie, who recently announced his retirement, stepping down as the voice actor for Frankie. Again, who knows what the real situation is, but obviously it's none of our business. But obviously his contributions will never be forgotten as Frankie's voice actor. A super job. Even in the post that he made about his retirement, it says, "I'm not crying." That was cool on Oda's behalf to give us this colour spread. You got the Straw Hats riding on Frankie. Interestingly enough, they all have super soakers, but Robin's the only one not taking aim. And more notably, you have Luffy and Nami. Of course, it wouldn't be a colour spread without Luffy and Nami front and centre. You got Nami latching onto Luffy's leg. But like I said, you got each of the Straw Hats with the exception of Robbie taking aim with the super soakers. Speaking of Straw Hats, we go to this chapter and immediately we start with the interactions with Luffy and Sol. And I love how respectful Oda is portraying Luffy right here, because we saw glimpses of this in Egghead Island involving Bonnie, and now we're seeing it here. And obviously Sol knows who Luffy is, but he's been looking into it very much. Sol's like, "Oh, you finally found them," and Robin's like, "Yep, I finally found precious friends that will protect even someone like me." We saw a glimpse of this scene back in Zoe, and the Straw Hats say, "We'll protect you no matter what." And here they're like crying, but they say, "We'll protect you forever." Just like last chapter, Jinbei, Zoro, and Luffy, they don't cry at all. Luffy actually responds, "Yeah, of course, that's a given." But I hope it comes to like Robin being able to take care of herself, especially on Elbaph. It doesn't take Oda long to like reveal what plans he has in store, especially for some of the Straw Hats. Like, it starts off so actually thanking Luffy and the rest of the Straw Hats for helping out and protecting Robin. Then we go into Vegapunk. Lilf starts up and actually reveals a bombshell. A contingency plan in case things went awry, because he literally made a clone of himself, the original Stella. It's a completely different replica model and with different specs from us satellites. It's me that came here 20 years ago. So he went to Elbaph, obviously, which kind of begs one of the questions, which I'll get into later. But Luffy freaking out, as probably we all were. Vegapunk's clone. We knew there had to be something to it, but this is leading into a confrontation with York down the line. Mark my words. One of the key statements made by Lilf here: the government would be suspicious if Stella is not around the lab for months, right? So Lilf is preparing to build a lab on Elbaph, live here, which kind of answers the question. Lilf may not be joining the Strass. I know a lot of people wanted that. The same thing with Bonnie. In fact, Bonnie joins this conversation and asks Lilf, "So if I wait, you can make my daddy well again too," which is something I brought to the forefront the moment we saw Kuma being added to the Viking ship. Like, why would you do that unless it's into Lilf, the only surviving functional Vegapunk left who can actually make things right again with Kuma and Bonnie. Now, I also pitched the idea maybe Frankie could join. I think he might. Called way back before the end of Egghead Island. So yeah, it's looking like that's where we're going. Then we go on to the tour around the outside the library and what's going on with the school. We get introduced. Well, first off, we get introduced to the librarian of the Owl Library, the librarian Aang, which is pretty cool. So Aang pretty much says they'll be in charge of directing Luffy, Usopp, and Zoro, as well as the rest of the Straw Hats. The guy for the Straw Hats showing them around the school outside. Meanwhile, Sol says, "I want to show Robin to the library," as if we didn't know this was going to happen, but it's cool. Oda's giving us progression with this. So now it's interesting too. Chopper goes along with Robin. Now Frankie mentions that he's interested in the giant tree of this island. I wonder why, but yeah. So that's interesting. So I wonder if there is something to this. Maybe that is the Yggdrasil tree, the wall tree. So We get some hints of what some of the Straw Hats are going to be doing. We don't know what Sanji Nami... Well, Nami already got a time to shine, but I imagine Nami's going to have some type of role, maybe with Zeus, because obviously what was said in the previous chapter, and Big Mom's soul is a part of Zeus, so maybe that's where that has some type of resolution. I don't know, but there was the reason Gerd mentioned that in the previous chapter. So we see some of the children of Elbaph that's attending this school, and we find out that the culture of Elbaph is not the same as it was 100 years ago, which is probably a good thing. The kids are like teasing like the Straw Hats here, so it's a puny human, let's catch them. Then Zoro is actually threatening to put one down even though it's a child. Usopp's like, no, they're just naughty brats. So the kids go on to say, we won't fight, it's dangerous. And then Usopp goes on to respond, aren't you the army of Elbaph? And then somebody responds, that's not the trend anymore. And Zoro immediately calls out, that's an adult voice. And we come to find out the teacher, Ripley, which is pretty cool. And we come to find out Luffy is already attached to Ripley because he's bouncing down on the cleavage of Ripley, which I'm sure is not a coincidence considering we have the Fishman Island remake anime, which is where Luffy met Shirahoshi and how he got interacted with Shirahoshi by bouncing up and down her cleavage. But Ripley's like, yeah, you're not that heavy anyway. You must be shocked, right? It's been 100 years since the warriors of Elbaph ran wild over the world. So obviously, slander, violence, plunder, war, we're not that era anymore. So that's a good thing. If only the people in the real world could take notice of this and actually apply that to everyday life, we might actually get somewhere. Then she seems very interested in the Straw Hats because she's like, oh, you're the Straw Hat Pirates. So then she says something that the former king of Elbaph mentioned, and we actually get a name, King Harold, which is pretty cool. So, the wise ruler, King Harold, once said, trade with other nations rather than fight with them. So, obviously he had, while bumping heads with the elders who value tradition from various villages. So, obviously there was a huge disconnect here involving the former king, and he wanted... The ideals of what we see now is something that he wanted to portray. So he wanted to change the culture of how Elbaph was perceived from the violent nature of what it once was. That's the vibe I get. But somebody obviously didn't want that change, or a group of people did not want that change. The great king who tried to reform this country was killed by his own son halfway through achieving his dream. That I am pretty sure that will change by the end of Elbaph. Like I said, there has to be a resolution to this, and that's the conflict right there. Obviously, there's people that take exception to Loki and what he did, but maybe things aren't what they seem and what we've been led to believe. So then Ripley goes on to ask Luffy, "You're not in your white form." So she's seen the bounty poster of Luffy in Gear 5th, which is interesting. I was looking forward to it. So then Luffy responds, "Oh, that's just my freedom form." But this is where we get another interesting piece of dialogue between the two, because according to Elbaph myths, there's a warrior who had that same form. Gee, I wonder who. So that's confirmation right there of who she's referring to, if it wasn't obvious enough. The fact that Oda keeps teasing this plot point. Loki is also nicknamed the Sun God. The literal Sun God, not the fake Rodo. That Loki was also nicknamed the Sun God as well. That was established in the initial chapter when we first entered Elbaph for the first time with the Straw Hats. We go back to the Owl Library, and this is where obviously things pick up in my mind, because when Sol tells Robin what we already know, that the books rescued in O'Hara by the scholars that we saw giants from Elbaph literally scoop up are in this library, as if we didn't know this is where this was going. So obviously now Robin knows this. What's interesting too, though, it's not just Robin and Chopper here. It's Lilith and Bonnie in this library as well. And also, the books are super enormous. Robin catches a massive book, and apparently, from what Sol said, every book from that time are gigantified. And we see that with the book that Robin carries, and it has archaeology written as the title. So if it wasn't obvious enough where this is going, these are all literature that O'Hara predicted 22 years ago. I searched carefully to ensure I didn't miss even a single book, and brought them all. So all that was rescued, keep that in mind, I'll get back to that in a second, was scooped up and brought here. Every one of them. So then Sol goes on to say, to think that day when I could show this to you has finally come. Robin tears up again, but obviously it's with a smile this time, because she's going to be able to read the books as well in full. Coincidentally enough, that's where it cuts. And we get another interesting conversation in the underworld with Loki responding to somebody on a snail Dendamushi. We know Loki and Luffy have a deal. That's the extent we know. We don't know what's going to happen once Luffy gets that key. We know he's going to, because this involves Shanks. So initially I thought there's no way Luffy's going to go through with this, but when this conversation shifted to Shanks, that's where, okay, Luffy's keeping this secret locked down. He's not mentioning this at all, nor should he, but I think he should tell at least the Straw Hats what's going on here. We know there's a deal being cut between Luffy and Loki. So then he goes on to say, because I have all the time in my hands, about that terrifying experience you went through, are you still traumatized by it? And at first I thought, is he talking to Harudin? He goes on to say, I'm frustrated too, even though I never saw or met you, by a strange twist of fate, you and I have become longtime friends. So after he said, wait, who's he talking to? Like, is it Harudin or is it somebody else? Then Loki goes on to say, if I had been there in your place, I would have leveled the entire area to ruins, massacred everybody. So that's what he says. So again, more questions. So then he goes on to name drop the person behind this call, and he goes on to say Masakau, or Masaku, however you want to pronounce it. And then, listen, if you let some full escape once they come back for revenge, unless you render them beyond recovery. And then Masako pretty much responds, recently behind those violent words, I noticed that your kindness is showing through. Which is interesting. Then he goes on to say, shut up, Masako. When I get freed from these chains, you better remember this. So that's where the conversation cuts. So who's he talking to? Masako. Is it somebody we've seen before, or is it somebody that's going to become important later on? We don't know. So then it cuts to the western village in Elbaph, and there's a feast going on, and we see Dory feasting it up with a bunch of giants. But all of a sudden, we see sparks emitting from the castle. Inside, we see sparks emitting, and we see this before. With a seal, a ritual summoning has been performed, and two characters appear, one of which looks like Shanks. Another character I don't think we've seen before, but that's how the chapter ends, with one character looking like Shanks and another character looking like somebody we've never met before. But they've been summoned via a ritual summoning to this castle. Inside this castle, I'm pretty sure that once belonged to King Harold, and now here they are. I'll get to that in a second, but that's how the chapter ends. Oda leaves us on a gigantic cliffhanger, literally, to end the year. The question becomes, okay, what's going on here? A lot of confusing things, but I don't think it's as confusing as a lot of people are making it out. People have been speculating for years. Shanks has a twin. So, number one, the fact that they got summoned via a ritual summoning, which we've only seen before with the Gorosei. So, keep that in mind. Now, I did notice the symbol that gets placed down looks different. Now, we don't know if that was a cut, and we'll see the full design in the anime, but that is not the same symbol we saw when we first saw Saturn. It was a completely different symbol. It may not mean much, but it's just something I noticed. But it's the same method of being summoned here via another island, which has historical significance. And we know, keep in mind, Vegapunk literally said, I was here 20 years ago. I don't see that to be just a coincidence, okay? But the fact we see two completely different but they're in cloaks, so they're hiding their presence. Now, we've only seen Shanks in this design once before, during the reverie when he had the audience with the Gorosei, and he was warning them about a specific pirate. We don't know who that was. A lot of people speculate ever since the movie and ever since the Holy Knight, the ruler of the Holy Knights got revealed as Saint Vigeland Garling, that a lot of people connected Shanks to this guy, and immediately people started thinking that, oh, Vigeland Garling is the brother of Shanks. Well, we still don't know what connection he has. The fact that we see this version of Shanks when we know he already left, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why would he show up with somebody completely random instead of it's somebody from his crew? That makes zero sense. So maybe there is something to the theory that possibly there's either a twin of Shanks, a twin brother of Shanks, or literally a clone of Shanks, which is what I'm thinking. The telling thing here, to me at least, is the fact that, one, he's in the same design that he was during the reverie. And I also find it very interesting. It's literally the same shot we see here that we saw at the reverie when he was standing before the Gorosei. It's literally the same shot, the same side, same everything. Now, funnily enough, we haven't seen the other side of his face. You know, the other side of his face that has a scar left by Teach. Yeah, we haven't seen that yet, so we don't know. So obviously Oda's kept that hidden for a reason. The other character we don't know. I don't think we've ever seen before. If you have, please let me know. But I have never seen this character before. So, is that person a reference to Uta? Maybe. But in canon format. Is Oda making this character canon with the design of Uta? I don't know. She definitely has the white... This character definitely has the white hair. But we don't know. So, I will leave it at that. If you guys think the same thing as what I'm thinking, maybe. But even if that's the case, like, I don't see how... Other than the aesthetic design of who this character might be, I don't see the importance. Unless these two are members of the Holy Knights. That's the only thing I'm thinking right now. And why they're summoned via a ritual summoning. That's the only thing. And keep in mind now, who took Saturn's place as a member of the Gorosei, as the science god, as a science warrior god. It's literally Saint Vigeland Garling who's in that position right now. So keep that in mind. So maybe there's something they realize with Elbaph, and they know the Straw Hats are there. That's the thing. Is this leading to an invasion because Oda left the caption, "Intruders appeared"? If that was the real Shanks that we come to see the last time we saw him on Elbaph, why would he be described as an intruder when we know he was kind of friendly? He's friends with the Giants for the most part, especially with Dorian Bragi, who helps him with Kid. That's another factor to take in consideration here. Describe it as intruders is very sus, to say the least. So, and the fact that it's coming inside the castle. Now that speaks, why the hell are they being summoned inside the castle? Which it was literally mentioned, there's nobody on the throne that replaced King Harold. Not even the princes. So the things that have been portrayed to us so far, are they what they seem? Or is there something else going on here? The way that was described by Ripley, it seemed to be like a difference here. Like, there's two ideologies. King Harold had the ideology that what we're seeing now on Elbaph, that the youth of Elbaph are being educated on not turning towards violence and war, which is very important. And maybe there was a difference of ideology, and maybe somebody involved with the world government had something to do with the death of King Harold. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. And is the reason they're here is because of what Robin's reading right now? Is that the reason why they're here? And the government do know that there's a potential that books from O'Hara was scooped up and rescued and sent to Elbaph. Because why else would they be here? Via this method. Oda's leaving us with a lot of question marks going into 2025, which I can't wait for him to answer because I know it's going to lead to something important. So this was another great chapter and a lot of setup. Is this alluded to what Oda mentioned a year ago at Jump Festa, when he literally said, 2 pirates will finally go head to head? Is this what he meant? Because Whether he's a clone or not, it's still a lookalike of Shanks. We don't know if he's as strong as the original. Doesn't really matter. It's a clone of Shanks. Is this what we're going to get in 2025? Are we going to get a version of Shanks versus Luffy? Whoever this character is, whether it's a reference to Uta or not, are they members of the Holy Knights? That's my question. But this changes the game. And I said last chapter, things are going way too smoothly right now. Oda has already shut things up, and we're only 5 chapters in. Keep in mind. So yeah, I dug this chapter a lot for a lot of different reasons. It seems we have some sort of order of where some of the Straw Hats and the roles they're going to have are placed. We know what the role that Luffy was going to have. I'm glad Oda finally revealed that plot point. This is shaping up to be a massive 2025 for One Piece, judging from this chapter. But let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think this is what it's leading to? A twin version of Shanks versus Luffy in 2025. If that is so, this will break the internet, as well as what we got with Robin. So let me know your thoughts, comments down below. I appreciate all you guys' support throughout the year. It's been an amazing year for One Piece. And we're ending on a high. That's the most important thing here. So happy holidays, guys. Keep safe. So that's going to do it for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this review, hit that thumbs up. I appreciate that. I appreciate all you guys' support. Subscribe channel for more One Piece. And I'll catch you guys in the new year. Thanks, guys. Bye.